Hello everybody, I am Clare McGlynn and I'm a Professor of Law at Durham University in the UK, and I'm honoured to be part of this panel focusing on the justice deficit for survivors. So in my short presentation now, I'll focus on survivors' choices in shaping our understanding of what justice means for survivors and what this means for our activism. Specifically, I'd like to highlight the breadth and diversity and variety of survivors' understandings of justice. And while our focus today is on innovative, transformative justice solutions, I actually want to emphasise that there is a role for the conventional justice system in meeting some of our survivors' justice interests. I want to raise this issue here for discussion as I guess a reflection on my own sense and experience over the last few years. It seems to me that making a case for criminalisation and the use of the criminal law and criminal justice system is increasingly dismissed as anti-survivor and anti-justice, viewed as ignoring the voices and experiences of women, particularly black and minoritised women. So those who engage with the criminal justice system are characterised as carceral feminists. They're described sometimes as lacking real insight into the realities of the criminal justice system and are said to have been co-opted and blinded, if you like, by the patriarchal neoliberal state. In essence, I fear that this debate over the role of the criminal justice system is becoming too polarised and lacking in nuance and understanding. But first, let us start just by seeing how we understand what survivors' justice interests are. And what do women survivors, and most of the research is on women survivors, predominantly understand as being justice for them? About 10 years ago, Nicole Westmoreland and I published research into the experiences of a woman, Lucy, who was a survivor of childhood rape. And she participated in a restorative justice conference with the perpetrator of her abuse. Lucy had found that experience of the restorative justice conference as a big turning point for her, and more important, she said, than him having gone to prison. After that study, Nicole and I spoke to many different groups of survivors, activists, scholars, sharing Lucy's experiences. And we were saying that we should be considering alternatives to the conventional criminal justice system in some circumstances and where a survivor is fully informed and chooses that option. For many years, this met with considerable resistance, us raising this potential and this issue. It was suggested that we were caving into or accepting the marginalisation and the sideways pushing for restorative justice. As if we'd given up on the idea of justice and we're not recognising sufficiently the harms and impacts of sexual violence. Then later work, just in the last few years, also with Nicole Westmoreland, we've tried to understand in more depth some of the breadth and nature of survivors' justice interests, developing the concept of kaleidoscopic justice. This refers to the kind of infinite, ever-changing, unpredictable patterns in a kaleidoscope. So this is justice as constantly shifting, justice refracted and changed through new circumstances, experiences. Justice as lived, ongoing, ever-evolving experience for survivors and different for different survivors. So the idea of kaleidoscopic justice, therefore, is that women's justice interests are many, they're varied, and they are beyond the conventional criminal justice system. So convictions, long prison sentences are not justice for all women. Women want more. They want recognition of their harms, consequences of many different kinds for perpetrators, prevention initiatives, and to be treated with dignity. So how has that argument been received? It feels to me that there's a growing consensus now around these shared ideas and understandings of justice as being beyond the criminal justice system. And we've seen this in many people's work and research, as we are here at this conference today. But at the same time, and perhaps not surprisingly, we've seen the growing critiques of the criminal justice system. They've intensified, and we've had this development of around a critique of what's called carceral feminism. So this label, carceral feminism, being used to describe those advocating criminal justice reform and who continue to see a role for the conventional justice system. It's generally a negative label that's applied. And it's often said that the carceral feminists, are not fully understanding what's happening in the criminal justice system, and particularly don't fully understand the experiences of Black and minoritized communities. So my concern here is this. What I fear is getting lost in these carceral feminist debates is that some women survivors do want a criminal justice response, and they do see justice as being about the conventional criminal justice system, in some contexts, for some women. So in other words, if we are to listen to survivors' voices, those voices are not only telling us that justice is beyond the conventional criminal justice system, they're also telling us that for some women, justice is part of the conventional criminal justice system. So for me, I now find myself in a rather strange position of having advocated for many years to see justice as beyond the criminal justice system, to look towards transformative, restorative, and all sorts of justice solutions. I'm now saying, can we also bring this back to also thinking about the conventional criminal justice system? And when I think about our work on kaleidoscopic justice with Nicole, I've got a confession there to make. Because of the women survivors we spoke to, some did see the conventional criminal justice system as justice for them. Some did talk about long prison sentences. One talked about castration. One even talked about the death penalty. And I confess that I did not want to emphasise those voices in our research. I must say that those same women also wanted recognition, consequences, prevention, education, but as well as, in addition to, some conventional criminal justice options and solutions. I wanted to emphasise that these women were also telling us about alternatives and innovative approaches that they wanted to seek. But I now find myself going back to their voices and thinking about what they were saying, with caveats. So we must be careful, of course, when listening to survivors' voices, to ensure we're not privileging certain voices. The women in the study that I did with Nicole about kaleidoscopic justice, for example, were all white women who undoubtedly have different experiences of the criminal justice system to Black and minoritized women. And we might also rightly say that there's really important awareness-raising work to be done to demonstrate and show the racism and oppressions of the criminal justice system. But I'm also suggesting that we must not drown out the voices of women who are seeking the criminal justice approach. So of course, what in essence we need to be doing is not drawing binary positions. It's not all about the criminal justice system or not. It must be about nuance, complexity, diversity, variety, and that is the whole emphasis of kaleidoscopic justice. Now, I think we see this in the work of, in the UK, for example, of a number of groups and scholars who are working around intersectional issues and around Black and minoritised women. So Avia Sarah Day and Aisha Gill have emphasised that intersectional perspectives must be brought to the work of organisations supporting Black and minoritised women in the criminal justice system. This does not preclude the criminal justice system, but it does require an intersectional analysis. Similarly, an organisation like IMCAN, which supports Black and minoritised women experiencing abuse, have written reports recently, Reclaiming Voices, where they recognise that some sexual violence survivors do seek criminal justice interventions. And they set out detailed recommendations as to how those services must better respond to Black and minoritised women's needs. IMCAN also co-authored a report about the decriminalisation of rape, calling for a comprehensive, detailed and nuanced investigation into the failings of the criminal justice system and calling for a transformed criminal justice system. Now, these are calls for holistic responses. These are calls for change within the criminal justice system at the same time as sustained, effective resourcing and the support of community-based alternatives to the criminal justice system. Where does this leave us? I'm reflecting on my experiences of advocating about women's voices and women's understandings of justice. I think the landscape is changing with a recognition of the diversity of survivors' justice interests. Me Too has helped broaden our understanding, and Black Lives Matter has also shaped our perspectives. But today I find myself saying that in listening to the voices of survivors, we must also listen to those who want criminal justice solutions. And in practice, this is in response to, and I'm responding to, this debate around carceral feminism. In essence, therefore, a recognition that racism, as well as class, gender, age and immigration status, are key factors in how the criminal justice system responds to sexual violence, needs not inevitably lead to disengaging with the criminal justice system. I'm trying to say that we can recognise its failings, we can argue for change, and we can still advocate for a transformed system that meets some survivors' needs in some circumstances. Multiple approaches are required. Support survivors engaging with the criminal justice system, reform that system, and we must also develop and support alternative, innovative, community-based, transformative justice solutions. Thank you.